88,888,888. So the next time Milo saw Thomas was when he hammered on the Ashbys' back door after he had seen Mrs. Doyle leave for the night. A light was burning in the back room where Milo worked. He was surprised that she welcomed him in as she had always done, but then, Thomas thought, he should not be surprised. Milo was like that, and she clearly had not taken his rejection to heart. Thomas was in trouble, and had come to see Milo for his own selfish reasons, and she had taken him in and he had cooked for them and made tea, and she had explained an adaptation to him of the radio telegraph which Chadwick had discussed with her. "I hope you do not think my father spent time in Ireland in the war because he was a coward," Milo told Thomas. "I know, but because he could not stand to think that Freddie was not there with him." Cousin Guglielmo was working on a projection of radio telegraphy without wires, she told him. "He showed my father and me, but I think he is wrong." "Well, not wrong, but I need to go back to Manchester, to the public library." On the table in front of her, Milo pushed over paper on which she had written, "James Clerk Maxwell and Hertzian Waves." She began to pace around the sitting room, not really looking at Thomas, who did not mind. Milo's voice was soothing, her manner familiar. It took him away from what he had done with Jimmy Kent. It's old technology, but with more energy, from electricity, more voltage. This could project the waves further, and send the signal by a relay, one transmitter to another. "I like hearing you talk about this, Milo," Thomas confided. "It is just as if Ernest is here." He got to his feet, and approached her. "Do you think that Mrs. Patmore, or Mr. Carson for that matter, would be interested in the electrical devices we have in the shop?" "She has her icebox, and her toaster." She moved aside to show Thomas a device with a long handle on it, a section parallel to the floor, and she moved over to show him. "What does it do?" Thomas asked her. "It descends to the floor, and on the carpet, it pulls up anything on it, like dust and dirt, light things." She showed him the box at the back. "It works using a vacuum. The electricity causes a partial pressure. There are no particles inside the box, so everything from the carpet is pulled in." Thomas felt his eyes widen. "That is something," he told her, touching the outer box. "Think of the work that would save. And all the contents that has been taken up can be emptied out into the fire." And all at once, Thomas took Milo's hands and drew her to him, and kissed her. It lasted just a few seconds before he broke away. "Wrong," he told himself. "It is just wrong." She might look like Ernest, but she wasn't him. "Thomas, what was that for?" Milo giggled. "Nothing," he told her. But no more was discussed, for her father called down, a faint voice, but Milo heard him anyway. "I have to go," Thomas told her. "You should bring the carpet cleaner. I think Mr. Carson will be interested." And Milo did so, hauling it with her the mile from home 3 days later. Exhausted, she stopped halfway up the drive, looking ahead and seeing a multitude of cars at the front of Downton. "It is the christening," Mrs. Hughes told her. "That of Sybil's and Tom's baby, also called Sybil." "Mrs. Hughes, can you tell me," Milo asked her, "can I leave the carpet cleaner with Mr. Carson so he can try it on a day with no christening?" Milo asked. "Certainly," Mrs. Hughes said. "Take it through." So Milo left the cleaner at the back of the office and was just coming out of the door when a hand gripped her shoulder. "What have you been sneaking at?" Milo's heart quickened. It was Bates, but she was quick enough to escape from his grip and, barreling past Anna and Daisy, shot out of the back door, and out to the bushes, where the child in her knew to hide. Milo took a slow walk back home, wondering about the carpet cleaner and whether it would be bought by Mrs. Hughes or Mr. Carson, and threw herself onto her bed, still fully clothed. 88,888,888, and it took until Mrs. Doyle came the day after and found Milo crying in the kitchen that she knew she didn't know what to do. Eileen Doyle had put a hand on her shoulder and told her she should see Dr. Clarkson, and he would sort it all out, and she did. And he did. Dr. Clarkson also told Milo that she needed to travel with the death certificate he had given to her, to have it registered at York, and a funeral would need to be arranged. She looked down at it. On the page it had her father's date of birth, date of death and address. In the entry for cause, Dr. Clarkson had written in his neat hand, "Influenza." "I can help with that," Mrs. Doyle told her, and she and Milo had laid him out in his best suit and the undertaker had taken him to the church, and she had sat down and told the Jamesons and a notice was put in the paper. "I just get the feeling that I don't know what I am doing for him," Milo told Mrs. Doyle, who had come with her to get the funeral notice into the newspaper. "He will be happy that you have managed so far," Mrs. Doyle assured her. But it was only by the chance meeting of the Ashbys' housekeeper in conversation at the butcher's with Mrs. Batemore that the news of Harold Ashby's death got to Downton. Perhaps she was keeping it quiet, she told Mrs. Hughes. "Is that likely?" Elsie Hughes asked the cook. "More likely. She doesn't know who to tell and who not, and what to do in these circumstances." "Well, the funeral is at the church on Friday, at 11. Mrs. Batemore told her. "Perhaps let Mr. Carson know and he can tell Lord Grantham. His lordship will know what to do." "Won't it upset her, a lot of people descending on the church?" Daisy asked her. "I mean, she might have her reasons for not tell people." Mrs. Hughes shook her head. "That girl is getting thinner every time I see her, trying to run her father's business, trying to do her brother's work and now this. I don't think she knows what she needs to do, what is socially right at such a time. And if she's living on her own down there, shouldn't someone be with her?" "I'll go," Thomas told them. "Now I'm not needed here. She knows me, I'll look after her." "You?" A voice behind him came, scornful and shrill. "You'll spend the night with a 17-year-old girl." Anna's face was one of shock. "What is it to you? A man and a girl, alone in the same house together at night, that's what," Anna replied. But Thomas ignored her and reached for his hat, which he repositioned on his head before striding towards the door. Harold Ashby, dead. Milo, his only heir, 17. Thomas strode out the yards as he crossed the path towards Downton village. He had searched for her next of kin but as yet, only had an inkling, and that inkling laid with the family into which Guglielmo Marconi had married into. They were the next of her family, Marconi's wife's family. "What was it that killed him?" Thomas asked Milo gently, when he had got her to sit down. Mrs. Doyle had made her anxious because Milo had never heard of a funeral breakfast until the housekeeper told her that she would need money to pay for the food, and extra for the time to do it. "I just don't know what I need to do, Thomas," Milo told him, shakily. "Is there anything else I have missed?" The bang on the door made her jump, and Milo answered it to Lord Grantham. "May I come in, Miss Ashby?" he asked her. Milo said nothing, but stood to one side. "I am sorry to come at this hour. I was informed that tomorrow is the funeral of your father." A nod. He stepped past her and into the parlour, which Milo used as a workshop, noting with a nod to Barrow, who returned the nod. "I am so deeply sorry to hear of the death of your father," he went on. "We all are." "Have you made all of the arrangements?" "I think so," Milo replied, but anxiety overcame her, and she confessed, "except for the funeral breakfast. How do I know how many people to make food for? And will they come here? And what do I need to do?" "Milo, please sit," he told her, and called Barrow to one side. "She is distressed, your lordship," Thomas told Robert Crawley. "She does not know how to deal with all of this. She found him, you see." "Then we can help her," Lord Grantham told him, and turned to Milo. "Your father did a lot of important work at Downton for me. It is the least we can do if you would do me the honor of relieving you of the burden of the funeral breakfast." He smiled kindly to her. Milo looked blankly at him. Lord Grantham tried again. "After the service, I will tell people they are to come to my home," he clarified. Milo looked across to Thomas, who smiled, encouragingly. "Yes, thank you, yes," Milo said. And Lord Grantham left, giving his consent for Thomas to remain with her. Thomas Barrow made her supper of eggs and bread and asked her what she was going to do. "The judiciary say I may use my father's money while my guardian is found. I may work in father's business. I may not go to university until I gain permission from whichever the guardian is." "And you are going to go as you are to the funeral?" Ernest had a black suit, Milo told him, and gestured to a clothes hanger on which the suit hung. "But look." She looked in dismay at the jacket, and the shirt underneath it, before flinging her clothes onto the floor, one at a time, before standing naked at her top half and putting the shirt over her. It would not button up, and Milo hung her arms by her sides. Thomas made a point of looking at her face. "Stop, Milo. Put something on for pity's sake," Thomas insisted. "You've got a woman's body now. That's why Ernest's clothes don't fit." Reaching pointedly to her original shirt, Thomas held it out in front of her. "You can't run around with noting on like when you were 3 in the scullery at Downton, Milo." Milo's face was a picture of innocence. "It's you, Thomas. I don't understand." But still, Thomas told her, sternly, "You must always dress on your own." After the funeral and the funeral breakfast, and Thomas taking her away home when it got too much for Milo, and her reassuring him she would be all right for her to stay on her own, to carry on, and Thomas insisting he must visit her once a week to make sure, it was the last time for a good many months that Milo went back up to Downton Abbey. And during that time, Thomas had enough opportunity to find out who her next of kin was, none other than the heir to the Inchiquin estate. It was his cousin, Fred Bonner, who told Thomas, and Thomas had laughed for a good few minutes before Fred demanded that Thomas let him in on the joke. "I know this man," he told Fred. "He is the most Republican, socialist man you could ever meet." Fred looked immediately at the information in front of him. "Really? Are you sure? Because he is named as the next Baron Inchiquin." And that was what was so funny, and time-critical. Tom Branson, with his 2 fathers and 1 mother, brought up in the family of the maid who the previous Baron had had an affair, was indeed Milo's next of kin, and her guardian. But only if he accepted the title. If he accepted, Harold Ashby's money would become his and he would have full say over what she did until Milo was 21. "But there is always marriage," Fred Bonner told his cousin. "That is not governed by guardianship, at least in Scotland. If she wanted to be free, this girl, she would do worse than to find someone to marry." 2 witnesses. He grinned, and passed the paper over to Thomas, waving away the copying fee. "So, Tom Branson," Thomas mused. "Something would have to be done before that odious MN got wind of money." Thomas wished he could watch it play out, the man's emotional twists and turns as he wrestled with his beliefs and his financial entitlement. His guess would be that his beliefs would melt away like snow in the face of a brilliant winter's morning. "I might even marry her. What do you think?" Fred glanced at the money that Milo was awarded. "Melusina Ashby." He glanced up to Thomas. "Is the pretty?" "She is to me," Thomas thought, "and pretty wealthy and pretty vulnerable." He nodded, before thanking his cousin and walking out into the evening air of the city of York.